Liberians got an early Merry Christmas, so we want to say Merry Christmas and welcome to this edition of Focus on Liberia. My guest tonight is Councilman Wynfred Russell. Mr. Russell, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And Merry Christmas to you and your team there, Focus on Liberia, and to all of your listeners and viewers. Great to be here.
Good. And I forgot to say, Honorable Wynfred Russell.
No, Wynfred Russell is just as fine. Thank you. Appreciate it.
We want to welcome our viewers from across the globe. This is Focus on Liberia. Liberians in the diaspora, specifically in the United States, got an early Christmas gift by passing into law the bill granting permanent status, or that will eventually give permanent status to Liberians that were on DED, that is the deferred enforced departure, and also the temporary protective status. So we are here, it's been signed into law by the president, and that's something that we call an early Christmas gift. So share this show, invite a friend, and let's get into this. Merry Christmas once again.
I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. I wanna wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of my heart. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Prospero año, felicidad. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Feliz Navidad. Prospero año, felicidad. Wish you a Merry Christmas. We wanna wish you a Merry Christmas. We wanna wish you a Merry Christmas from the bottom of our heart.
Merry Christmas, fellow Liberians and friends of Liberia. Again, welcome to Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jar, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. As stated before, we have an early Christmas gift. That is, those Liberians who have been on temporary status or defer enforced departure. There's a bill that's being passed and also signed by the President of the United States, granting them permanent status when they go through the process. So we have with us, there are a lot of Liberians who have been putting in the time, the effort, and fighting for this to come to pass. There are so many. This started over 10 years ago, and finally it has come to pass. So one of those who have been working for this is Mr. Wynfred Russell, a council member on from Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. Mr. Russell, once again, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
You're right. How's the city?
The city is great. There's the festive mood. By city, if you're talking about Washington, D.C., people here, it's very festive.
I'm talking about Brooklyn Park. Oh, you're in Washington, D.C. right now?
Yes, I'm in Washington, D.C. I came in for the signing on Friday, but I left. Brooklyn Park is doing great. It was pretty warm today, so folks going about their daily routines and Christmas shopping as well, and taking advantage of the warm weather, unseasonably warm weather that we're having right now. So everything I left everything fine, and I heard it's still great. In Washington, D.C., of course, it's also very festive and busy, and everyone trying to get the last Christmas shopping done.
There's a little, your audio has a little hiccup there. But
okay, should I take out my headphones, or I'm using the headphone?
Let's see without headphones how it's going to sound.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah, sound better.
Okay.
If there's any reason, anything else, I'll let you know. But
Okay.
today we're here to kind of celebrate the good news. So first of all, tell me what has just happened.
Well, what has happened has been just culminated in the signing of the National Defense Authorization Act for 2020. And within that act, subsumed within that act, is a provision that would grant permanent residency, otherwise known as green card, to Liberians who have been here for decades now. They first came here back in the 90s, early 91, and got on what was called temporary protected status, TPS. The temporary protected status then transitioned into deferred enforced departure, DED. And so what happened on Friday was that all these years, these Liberians who've been on that temporary provision or temporary order, they had to renew it every year. So it was an annual renewal. In some cases, annual. In other cases, like 18 months or so. So they will not have to do that anymore. So with the new bill, with this bill that was signed, with this provision for DED, and people who came here on as part of Ebola, as a result of Ebola, they will now get their green cards, and which will then open then up for full U.S. citizenship after 5 years. But as you said, it's just a small correction. This has not been just 10 years. This has been going on for more than 25 years. People have been advocating, have been fighting for this. It's been happening long before I even came to Minnesota. Just about before I even came to the States, actually. So it's been going on for a very, very long time. So all of that culminated into the signing of a provision that would now give these folks permanent residency and citizenship eventually.
That's pretty good news. And once again, Merry Christmas. That's our early Christmas gift. So before we even go into what's in the bill and what it means, let us go back into history. You kind of touch on it a little bit about the status of Liberia, of Liberians here in the States. So let's go back into 20 years plus. What has been the plight of Liberians, and how have people really coped with this? So walk me through the history of this fight that has just been won.
Well, it's been a long, arduous fight, as I said, but the approach that we took that led to the result that we received on Friday was this sort of, as we said back home, it takes a village, and it was a village-like approach that we took to get this done. It's been difficult. It's been expensive. There's been a lot of anxiety. So you can imagine every year people had to get this annual renewal. You weren't sure whether it was going to be renewed or not. So you're just in this sort of constant state of anxiety, of fear, what's going to happen. So there's been a lot of those sort of issues going on around in the community. And so every president, starting from George Bush, the older George Bush, to this current president, since then, there have always been this annual renewal. There's always been this sort of issue a cloud hanging over the community, especially for those who at DED, as to what's going to happen if people are going to be sent back or not. And the fear is that we really didn't want people to go back because many of these people fled because of the atrocities that they experienced firsthand. In some cases, they witnessed during the civil war in Liberia. And many of these perpetrators are still there on the ground in Liberia. And matter of fact, many of them hold very powerful positions in government. And so we felt that there is no, it makes no sense to send these people back into an environment that have victimized them for a very long time, that was responsible for why they sought refuge in the U.S. So we started to make the case to different administrations over the years, both Democratic administrations and Republican administrations as well, trying to make the case as to why these Liberians who have been granted this temporary stay. So first, like I said, they received a temporary protected status. By the way, TPS as a statute was created. The first group of people to benefit from that law when it was created back in 1991 were Liberians. Liberians were the first group of folks to get a temporary protected status. I mean, since then, a number of other countries, citizens for a number of other countries have benefited from it. Liberians are the first. So Liberians have been on this since 1991, so a very, very long time. And so imagine, every year you are not sure if you should buy a house or buy a car, because you may have to go back, you may have to leave it there, go back, or even start a family. So it was a very difficult position to be in. But those are some of the challenges and some of the issues that people were facing, and we felt that the way to resolve this is to how do we then have a longer extension, or give these folks permanent residency, and then create a pathway to citizenship. So before, when it started first, it was just about appealing and advocating for the annual renewal. So it got to the point where when it got up, I think like 2017, there were a lot of advocacy groups that came out and said, "Look, we got to change this our approach to advocacy here, and then go after the ultimate. Let's push for green card and let's push for citizenship." This, 2 years ago, that's when folks, in earnest, started talking about a different strategy, a different approach. Let us now look for
temporary,
as opposed to these annual renewals.
And that's I know, I can imagine almost everyone, somebody, have a family member, relative, or friend who is on this temporary status, and the uncertainty about living with that uncertainty has been very, very harsh. But for 20 years or more, there have been a lot of people who have been working on this, and we want to acknowledge that. And even starting this show, we extended the invitation to other people who have also been working, even though we can't have everybody. Mr. Abdullah Kiatamba, who's head of the Africa Immigration Services, was invited because they too from that side have been doing some work. I understand, and he's also the EULA representative on the immigration thing. Also, Mayor Wilmon Collins of Montana has done some work. We know that EULA has been involved even from the time it was on TPS. It was TPS before even going to DED. And so a lot of people have been involved, a lot of Liberians, and also our American friends. So let's talk about, if you, based on this history, if there are other people that you remember that we can pay homage to for their work in making this to come to pass, going back as far as 20 years, if you have that knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. It's going to be difficult to, I don't know if I want to start naming names. It's going to be difficult to acknowledge or recognize all of the folks who worked over the years on ensuring that Liberian get a permanent residency status and eventual citizenship. Like I said, it's been one of the reasons why we were successful is that this was a big tent or a big palava hut, however way you want to call it, whatever analogy you like to use. There's been a group, and I must say, honestly, many of the people who have been at the forefront of this, who have done a lot of the heavy lifting, have been non-Liberians. So there have been a lot of folks from other community groups. This has been this was a multinational, multi-ethnic, multi-racial, multi-generational group of folks that come together to make this happen. EULA obviously played a significant role, and has always played a significant role from the onset of this advocacy. The Liberian Embassy accredited to Washington, D.C. as well. And of course, you have folks who started it, but as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter what part of the journey you join or you jump in. So at the end of the day, we all were able to accomplish this. I must emphasize there's no one individual or one group who deserve credit or all of the credit for this work. This work has been very shared and collaborative. And so everybody, even the Liberian community as a whole, many folks, of course, you're going to have some naysayers. There were some naysayers, of course, and there were folks, calling for people to go back home and all of that. So you can expect some of those things. But the truth of the matter is, vast majority of regular community folks within the diaspora did their part, this step forward. So for those of us, and for me personally, I'm grateful to the DED holders, those DED holders and TPS and DED holders who stepped forward to allow us to help to tell their story. We also need to recognize them. And for me, I'd like to say thank you to them for helping to tell their story. It was not an easy thing. The shame, the stigma attached to it, it was very, very difficult. And I know there were some folks who have said, we're here fighting for these DED holders. They were not coming up, many of them coming up to these rallies. But for me, I didn't join this, this is what I wanted to do, and this is what I like to do. I'm in the service business. I have a deep passion for service. So I didn't need DED folks, for example, to be there, but I know it would have helped because, as you know, in America, the folks like numbers. We want to see the people who are impacted by this, not a council member or a community leader or so. But having said that, we are grateful to those who stepped forward or who were in a position to step forward to help with this effort. The appreciation and the thanks across Senator Jack Reed, who have been trying to push a provision for DED, a standalone DED bill for one, since 1999, to a new Senator Tina Smith, to Al Franken, who she replaced, to Keith Ellison, to Van Hoven from Maryland, from Steny Hoyer, Amy Klobuchar, Dean Phillips, Ilhan Omar. These are all new folks who came, who just joined the fight. Eric Paulson was there, before. So it cuts across. There were lawyers from New York, from Washington D.C., from Massachusetts, who all come together, and of course organizations in Minnesota and other parts of the country to step forward to join and help this fight. Minnesota Advocates for Human Rights, for example, they gave a lot of their attorneys to come, and help in this process. So there were lots of people. Their talents, play a very critical, pivotal role in all of this, especially at the tail end of it. So we had Kenyans, we have Somalis, we had Jamaicans, Panamanians, Haitians. There was a vast, consortium of folks, Americans, white Americans, Black Americans, all kinds of people who joined in, because all that they wanted was that to provide permanent residency for these folks. So I can go on and on and on and on. but it was a very diverse group of folks. No one individual or one organization or one group deserve credit.
Thank you. And we'll get into the politics of it, how it all play out in the House and in the Senate. But let's look at specifically what is in this bill, what is in this thing that has been signed.
So, like I said, I'm still in Washington, D.C., and one of the things, I still have a series of meetings here with some of the lawyers who have been working on this. And so now that the president has signed, it's gone through the legislative process. And the president have now signed it. Officially, it's law. So now, there are several other steps it's going to take. Then it's going to move into the administrative side of it, which is the Department of Homeland Security. The Homeland Security now is going to determine, based on this bill, who all of the folks who are going to be eligible to apply. So there is still a lot of unknowns. So it's still kind of early to tell, but what we know, because we know that according to the government, right? According to the numbers that the government gave us, there are only 4,000 Liberians who are holders of DED. Anecdotally, number of folks to tell you that the numbers, the number is too low. Should be more than 4,000, right? And the reason folks are saying it's too low is because the 4,000 numbers, those are numbers of people who have actually gone to the Department of Homeland Security and applied for green card, for work permit, not green card, but for work permit. So when you go and apply for work permit, and then of course they have, they can keep track of all of those who've applied. So that's the number that they have. Yeah. So we still don't know, precisely how many Liberians are on DED. We still don't know that for a fact. So part of this administrative process now, they'll be able to determine, that. Now, is it going to cover only the people, the 4,000 people who may have registered every year or every other year for the work permit, and they're being tracked of they're part of our database at the DHS, or is it going to cover up those who have been here since 1991, even though they may have been eligible for TPS and DED, but never did apply? So at this point, we don't know, and we have to wait until the Department of Homeland Security, until it does its due diligence and can come up with how it's going to interpret and then implement this law that has been passed by Congress and signed by the president. Just one last point on that. Now, why is there such an ambiguity around the numbers? So if you apply for a job, or when you apply for a job, as you well know, some places they allow you, when you go in, the Human Resources Department or so, you have to get you have to show your work permit, to get all of your documents, and then usually that work permit, of course, if the work permit, say for example, you have a TPS work permit, is typically it was for 1 year. So after that year it expired, the Human Resources Department is supposed to come back to you and ask you for your most updated. Right. But not all places do that. So the Know Dennis, for example, has been working with Focus on Liberia for all these years. We know him. So Dennis has been there for 10, 15 years. So for the first 2-3 years, they may have checked your work permit, and then after a while, they never checked it again. So whenever another, another renewal came out, Dennis didn't see the need to go back there to go get another work permit, because my company is not asking me for that, has not asked me for that. So Dennis just continue going on, continue working. Nobody is asking him for any work permit. So he's not going back to the Department of Homeland Security to get a work permit. So that's how some people may have fallen through the cracks. And so they're just like, you know what? I'm not going to rock the boat. I'm just going to let it be. Right. Others who may, have an African food store, or maybe have a little business that they've been working for themselves. So they may have been eligible for DED or PPS, but never did apply for it because they had income coming in, So the question then is, will those people be eligible under this bill, under this provision, or under the 4,000 people who may have been registering every year, every other year? So those are all of the questions that still need to be be answered. Now, then you have the other group of the Ebola TPS folks, because it says DED, Ebola TPS, and others. Who are the others? The Department of Homeland Security will have to decipher all of that and then let us know. So we're still waiting for that to come down.
Yeah. Assuming they are talking about the 4,000. So at the end of, at the beginning of next year, what are they supposed to do? Do we know that?
Well, I mean, they currently, no, we don't know that yet. Like I said, everything, we still have to wait until DHS can tell us, what the next steps are. So at this point, we're just waiting to hear from DHS. But the status that they're on now currently, it ends in March 31st, 2020. So I'm almost certain, I have no timeline for sure. I'm certain by March, the folks will know where they can go to apply, how much it's going to cost, all of that. So all of those things are going to come out. As we speak now, that information is not out yet. The bill was just signed on Friday night by Trump. So it still had, there's still a lot of procedural type issues and all this sort of stuff that I have to go through. I have to, you have to be printed into handbill and all that sort of stuff. I mean, so there's so many different procedures that it still has to go through before we know exactly what people need to do, before we can advise people what to do. But it is law. There's no taking it back. They were fine, so people just need to relax and don't panic about it. There's nothing to panic about. The panicking time is all over.
And that's what I was about to ask. If there's any reason why we cannot do the full happy dance yet.
No, there's no reason. I mean, it's a done deal, bro. It's a done deal. Like I said, the only question is that how the DHS is going to interpret that law. It's going to be the 4,000 plus all these other folks, or it's going to be, I mean, that's the only thing. But those who are on DED officially and those who were on the Ebola TPS will get green cards, and after 5 years, they will become U.S. citizens. That is for sure.
They will be eligible.
How many of them or who they are, whether it's Wynfred going to get it or Dennis is going to, that I don't know.
Right. And so so right now at the end of it, let's say if it is clear today, we don't know the process, but it'll be something like all those on DED come and apply for your green card. Then after 5 years, get in line and apply for your citizenship. Yeah,
I mean, so after 5 years, they'll be eligible. And some people may not want to apply for citizenship.
Yeah, because you want to run.
But at least but the bill has created, that pathway. A number of folks who, just want a green card, they just want that stability. They want to be able to go back home and come back at a job. They don't want to be hassled. They don't want to have this cloud hanging over their head. All of this anxiety. They don't have to deal with that. So there'll be many people who may not opt to becoming a U.S. citizen.
Right. And I hope those who went to Liberia, because the process has been very long. There are some people, and that's why some of the story on DED is personal to some of us, because we have family members, we have friends. Some have taken different approaches so as to cope with this whole DED thing. Some did what in Liberia we say monkey jam, eat pepper. Some have gone back to Liberia. Some have even died in the process. Some have gone to other countries, and then a lot of things have happened. So it's really surreal when we heard that this was finally signed into law. So folks just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing with Brooklyn Park Council member Wynfred Russell. He's been one of those who have been pushing for this effort for Liberians on DED to have some status. And we're glad that this effort had already paid off. As he said, a lot of people have worked on this dating back to 20 years ago. There are some who came at the tail end, and no matter at what point you join the process, it's time for us to do the happy dance that, alas, Liberians on DED and TPS will no longer live under such uncertainty. And if you want to join the conversation, we want to even have some people on DED call us to share their story and share, how they feel that this is finally come to pass. The number is 605-313-6004. The code is 791403. And that number is posted on Facebook. You can call and let's celebrate this good news. That's an early Christmas gift to all of us. And there were some people who were deported because of this. There were some people who went through a whole lot of things. What are some of the stories that you're hearing? And what were some of the reactions from those who are on DED and some who have even left and gone to Liberia? What are they saying now?
A lot of people are, you're right. I mean, you eloquently laid it out. I mean, there have been, throughout these 25 plus years, there's been a lot of issues, a lot of stories. Now, as you know, another criteria that you that folks have to be aware of is that you eligibility also requires that you if you've been out of the country for more than 180 days, you're not eligible. So many of those people, I don't know how long many of them have been out of the country, out of the US. So if you left the US and it's been over 180 days, you may not be eligible, under this new provision. So there are folks I know who, I personally know folks who were put in jail. Some people were deported. They were on TPS or DED and did not apply, didn't have the current TPS or DED document. And when they were picked up by ICE, they were deported. There were some folks who got married to others and may have some disagreement and issue. And in the middle of the marriage, as we're about to get the paperwork, the marriage crumbled, and it's supposed to the other party who were doing the filing and all of that, helping out. They just pulled the plug and cancel it, so they had to start the process all over. There were folks who've had kids with have kids, and they're not in a position to take care of the kids adequately because they're not working. And then the partners took the issue to law enforcement, and some of them were picked up. There was just a whole host of issues. And many people, given the uncertainty of this, went to other countries. Some went to Canada. I know a good number of folks who traveled to Canada because they didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. So they decided to go to Canada. There were folks who voluntarily left and went back to Liberia because this became so hopeless to them. So, many of those people may not be eligible under this new provision.
And sometimes they say, they just the night before the dawn can be very dark.
Yes.
At some point, it seemed very impossible, especially with the coming into power of President Trump and some of the laws they were making against, immigrants, especially from, developing countries. So it looks so bleak, and now, voila, there it is. But let's hold that. Let me go to the phone lines because we want people to join the conversation and let us celebrate this victory.
Hello.
Yes, caller on the line. Your name and where you calling from?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Good afternoon, Billy. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Welcome.
Yes. Good afternoon, Billy. This is Professor Davis. How are you?
Professor David, welcome to Focus on Liberia. Your question or comments?
Yes, sir. First of all, I want to say thanks. I want to say congratulations to the Liberian immigrants, which will have permanent status. I think it's fantastic. And Dennis, what I wanted to ask your guest is this, is that the Congressional Black Caucus has had a long history of activism with African immigrants in the United States. And so what I wanted to ask Representative Russell is, what was the specific role played by the Congressional Black Caucus in this process? And also, he mentioned Keith Ellis. I'm wondering specifically, what was the role that Keith Ellis, who is the Attorney General for the state of Minnesota, played? And I do want to say this briefly. He did mention that it was an array of different organizations. But again, I do know that the CBC, or the Congressional Black Caucus, has a long history of activism when it comes to African immigrants. So I'll listen to your guest.
Thank you. Mr. Rosso.
Yeah, thanks, Professor. Thanks for your question. Again, like I said earlier, that I put my foot in my mouth. That's why I didn't want to go and start naming organizations. But I mean, he is absolutely right. The Congressional Black Caucus play a humongous role in advocating for not only Liberian immigrants who are on TPS and DED, but on Black immigrants. We have a situation right now that is sort of low level at the border, between the U.S. and Mexico, where you have immigrants, they're stranded and they've not been allowed to come in the country. They're stranded across on the other side of the border in Tijuana. Is a huge issue. There are a lot of issue around discrimination and racism there that these Africans have experienced. Language barrier, language issue, because many of them, many are from Cameroon. And so the Congressional Black Caucus have been there and helping out to see how best to work out the situation to get these folks some support and to get to amplify their story. So the Congressional Black Caucus has played a very, very and continues to play a very pivotal role in elevating and amplifying the voices of Black immigrants. I think we hear a lot about when you talk about immigration in this country. Unfortunately, what comes to mind is Latino folks, folks from South and Central America, Black people. Even though you have Black people in all of those places, you don't hear the stories. And so the Congressional Black Caucus has been very pivotal in helping to amplify. And so coming back to DED, from the onset of this advocacy, the Congressional Black Caucus has been there. Congressman Peen from New Jersey, I think his son has now taken over from him. I believe he's passed. He was some of the early supporters of trying to ensure that African immigrants, and primarily Liberian immigrants, as you know, Liberians have a very unique story and history between African Americans, or with African Americans. Justice Jackson has been involved at one time. The Rainbow Push Coalition. All of these folks have been, involved. Sheila Jackson Lee, Reverend Al Sharpton, from New York. There have been a big group of Liberians been in New York there. So all of these folks have played, played a significant role, and played a significant role all the way to the end of this process. So thanks for pointing that out. I'm sorry I missed that, or I didn't acknowledge the Congressional Black Caucus in the beginning when I was talking about all of the plethora of groups that came together to make this happen.
Yeah, so I got you in trouble. Let me bring on another caller. Caller, your name and where you calling from?
Yes, this is William King. Are we having any echo, or it's fine?
Babe, Mata.
Go ahead, William.
Okay. Thank you for the show. Thank you for this information. The DED stuff is definitely coming timely. I got a question for you. Maybe you may be able to know this or not. I'm not sure. But echo. Okay, hold on one second. Let me get off the. I think it's because I'm on both the Facebook Live and also the thing, the show. Hold on. Is it much better now?
Yes, go ahead, William.
Okay, so my question was, if somebody had a lawyer and they came in on this TPS or on the TPS stuff, but the lawyer filled them underneath it, are they just, there's nothing can be done? Or if they have document that shows that they requested the lawyer to file them on it and the lawyer didn't, will that help them get reinstated underneath this? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Russell, those who kind of fell off the TPS or the DED, or maybe they didn't file on time, what happened to them now? William, that's what you're asking.
Yeah, like the lawyer, they give all the paperwork to the lawyer to file, and the lawyer neglected to file. Is that a longer process? Will this still be? Can it still make a case or no? If it's too technical, that's fine.
Yes, I'm afraid it's a little technical for me. I'm more of a policy kind of guy and advocacy policy. So I'm not a legal or immigration sort of legal expert or anything.
Attorney, okay. And
Yeah,
then, sorry, the other question, sorry, is the window open now? Is it open enough that applications can be submitted, or we have to wait until the process comes out?
Yeah, it's not open now. You know, I would give it like maybe say the second week or so of January. To right now, of course, as you know, with the Christmas right around the corner, we got New Year's coming up, so there'll not be a lot going on until maybe that time. So one of the things is that if you have this kind of
Yeah, I was going to say, what can Liberians do? What can they do to get ready, to get prepared to file this? What can they do over the next 10 days or 15 days Christmas? Because sometimes it's good to be the first in line or whatever, right? So what can we begin to prepare for in the next few days?
Well, just
personally, do we get documents ready? What can we begin to gather?
Well, if like I said, if you've always been on DED and always gotten your renewal and all of that, it may just be a straight shot. We just go, and apply, pay whatever fee you have to pay, and and just take it from there. So it'll be almost like the same sort of processes that people have to go through when they used to go to get their I-765 to get their work permit. It may be a little another step to get your permanent residency, of course. A few other steps to get a permanent residency, of course. So we just have to do that now. If you have one of these sort of complicated type situation like you described earlier, then you may require a lawyer, to try to see. At this point, as I said earlier, we don't know who is going to, going to be covered by this bill. So we know that it's DED holders of people who are on DED and Ebola TPS. But at one point, if you drop out, if you didn't renew, are you still eligible? All of those things, we don't know that now until the administrative process has been laid out by the Department of Homeland Security. And then folks can go in. I don't know how much the fee is going to be either, but I know it's going to be, you have to pay some fee to get this all processed. So one of the things people need to start doing is if they have maybe some previous, documentations that they filed for TPS or DED or work permit, all the sort of documents, you just need to start laying them out. And so when they go in to apply, they can take all of those things in. I don't know specifically what documents will be required for any of those processes. You can start collecting your money and putting your money together, getting all your documents put together, and it's going to be a pretty. If you don't have any sort of complication, it's expected to be a smooth process.
Yeah. And I hope we're going to have a Liberian
thank
lawyer.
you.
So we have
Thank you.
call when it's time for processing. We have a group available, a number to call to be able to assist Liberians with all these legal processes?
Yes, yes, for sure. For sure.
Oh, all right. There's a question. I know there were other countries. I don't know if there were there were countries on TPS. You know, I don't know of DED, but is this covering only Liberians, or that bill is open to anyone who's on DED from maybe Sierra Leone, Haiti, or somewhere else?
Well, according to the language I read in the bill, it's just Liberians, and for sure, DED it's exclusively Liberians. There's no other group or other country citizens on DED. It's only Liberians that are on DED.
Okay. Good. So, and you can adjust your camera a little bit so we can see you.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, all right, that's good. All right. You know, this process started long ago, and this is been going on, as I alluded to before we brought in the colors. A lot of people have helped, you know, to bringing this to pass. It's been a long time coming, and at a time that it looked so gloomy for us based on who's in the White House, it happened. What changed this time that made this possible? Is it our luck or what?
Well, the combination of a lot of things. For sure, prayers. I mean, there are a lot of prayers now. You know, Trump, you know, extended this twice. So the first extension, the evangelical had a lot to do with it. So, you know, Trump base has a lot of staunch, you know, evangelicals. So many of them, you know, appeal and you know, help, you know, they get the first Trump extension. Now, this process, what it is now, so what happened, as you remember, we were part of, there were three immigration buckets. So there's DACA, there was TPS, and then there was DED. DED is the smaller of the two, right? And so we had to join the folks with the DACA and the TPS and all of that too, to try to get this through. So as the Liberians would say, you know, through crab, coffee, drink water. You know, with all due respect, you know, the Liberians don't have didn't have the wherewithal or the resources to go on its own. Okay, so we needed the support and the resources from a lot of these big organizations. DACA has a lot of support, a lot of resources. So does TPS. DED, not so much, but it's all immigration issue. And you're talking about, you know, especially immigration as it pertains to developing countries, and in this case, you know, African countries. So there were a lot of support. So we pushed through this standalone immigration bill. So we advocated and lobbied for this standalone immigration bill called the Dream and Promise Act, HR 6. So the Dream and Promise Act passed the House, but it stalled in the Senate. You know, the Republicans refused to bring it up in the Senate because many Republicans do not support DACA because they see DACA as rewarding, any support for DACA they see as rewarding bad behavior. So they did not support DACA. So one of the things they tried to get us to do was say, look, you all need to divorce yourself from this larger immigration issue, the DACA and the TPS, you go on your own because they see DACA as folks coming here illegally. DED folks came here legally. They're on a legal status. But the difference, you know, so, but DED is only the prerogative of the president. So only the president can do something about DED. You know, so how do we get to Trump? You know, so that's what I said. The first time we had to work through his evangelical base, and they were able to get to him and appeal to him for him to do the extension. So now the bill had passed. So after the bill passed in the House, the HR 6 bill I'm talking about, after that passed in the House, so we're looking at different strategy of how do we bring it out in the Senate. And that's where a lot of work was done, a lot of negotiation was done. So we've received information from one of the senator's office and said, look, do you all know folks from Idaho, from Boise, Idaho? And we said, you know, there were a whole group of us. Mayor Collins was part of that group. Jackson George, the Consul General, Joan Lloyd was part of that. Caroline Grimes was also part of that. And so they said, look, if you all have know someone in Idaho, we need you all to reach out to them in Idaho, because there's a senator in Idaho with a small Liberian constituency there, and he's a very powerful senator. You all need to try to reach out to him. So Mayor Collins, who is from Montana, and Montana, I believe, shares border with Idaho, or pretty close by, and he had been to Idaho. He has some connection in Idaho. So he put us in touch with those folks in Idaho, who then connected us to the small Liberian community there, who then went and talked to Senator James Rich. So Senator James Rich is the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And so getting Senator Rich on board and knowing that he has a little fledgling Liberian immigrant community there, so we talked to this guy. I said, damn, what are people doing in Idaho? Liberians said, well, you know, they were there, you know, and they were doing well, they were thriving, you know, but, you know, Boise is not a big city. And so I'm sure the senator was very engaged with the African immigrants, you know, there. So that engagement opened the door for Senator Jack Reed and Tina Smith to come in with their DED provision. So Senator Rich helped with the negotiation to get his Republican colleagues on board to help with the negotiation to get DED provision tied to this massive defense authorization bill. So to attach it to that. Obviously, the Democrats had to give up a lot for that to happen, to the chagrin of a lot of the progressive Democrats as well. But that's, you know, in a nutshell, that was part of the advocacy, and part of the work that went around at the very end of this process, because it got to a point where we had just like, you know, threw up our hands. You know, it's like, well, you know, what do we do next? The stuff has passed. HR 6 has passed the House. We can't get Mitch McConnell to get it up in the Senate. So what else do we do? So that was the breakthrough. So the breakthrough, reaching out to Senator Rich, who then, you know, would open and willing to help his little small constituency there to say, okay, I would negotiate, you know, with my colleagues, and you know, and then you know, Jack Reed, of course, is on the Senate Armed Services Committee too as well, and he's been putting this bill through for a long time, but it's always been a standalone DED bill, a DED TPS bill. This time, he was able to refashion, you know, a piece of it, just that little provision, and they allowed him to attach it on to this DED, to this defense $738 billion defense authorization bill. So that's how it went through.
Wow. And as you were saying, Liberia is the only country on DED. Then
Yes.
so that number is very small, around 4,000. On TPS, we have El Salvador, Haiti, Honduras, Nepal, Nicaragua, and Sudan. So that's a little bigger chunk.
Yeah.
So you will see why. But why wouldn't anyone think of it? Because normally the way bills are passed is they try to take a small bill and put it in a bigger one, or a small legislation and put it in a big bill. So I mean, why are we thinking about this very late?
Well, I mean, again, because the progressive Democrats and other folks, the Democratic Party who have been pushing for, you know, immigration reform and all of that, didn't want the Republicans. They felt that the Republicans were trying to do this divide and conquer. So they didn't want the Republicans to succeed in splitting up all of these advocacy groups. Many of these groups who are working on this sort of aligned or affiliated with the Democratic Party. for in some way, shape, or form. So one of the, they knew that was a way. They knew that the Republicans, it's like, well, if we want to pass immigration, we need to pass it for all. So one of the things that we kept saying, but again, because DED is a small little piece within this huge basket of immigration interest and all of that. So how do we get traction? I mean, we're saying all of this, but how do we get traction to say, okay, you know what? Let us go for incremental wins as opposed to some sort of large win. And it was difficult to get traction. But of course, if you have someone like Jack Reed on your side, and you have Tina Smith and our powerful senators on your side, it helped to make it a little easier. But the reason is that they've told us. I mean, we're part of this strategy for a long time. Say, look, even my mayor, who's also a Republican, who always told me, said, look, if your Liberians can get away from DACA and all of that and just go straight, we would be more inclined to helping you. And I'm sure Jack Reed and them may have thought about this because, like I said, he's been trying to push a standalone immigration bill for Liberians for about 10 years or so now. But every time he tried to push something, I'm sure he tried to attach it on to some other bill. It's not work. But the defense bill, is a big bill, and it's a very important bill for all politicians. So nobody wants to be seen as voting against, supporting the troops, providing, resources, for more arms and ammunition and all of that. No politician wants to be seen as voting against that or not supporting that. So they just, strategically say, well, okay, you know what, we've tried everything else, but we know it's going to be tough. But let's see if we can attach this on the defense bill. And
let me read a comment from Facebook from Agatha Shelley. And I will premise this to say, when something is done, there are a lot of, anyway, let me just read it. It said, was the embassy, the Liberian embassy accredited NIAN Washington involved on this process?
Well, not that I know, not formally, but we did hold a series of meetings at the embassy. I've been there a couple of times to work with us because, see, the embassy doesn't want to be seen as getting involved in U.S., domestic sort of political issues and all of that. The embassy is not an advocacy group. So we were doing the advocacy and all that sort of stuff. We needed the support of the embassy many times in order to get, especially try to tell the story about how dire things are, and Liberia was not in the position to receive all these the influx of people coming from the States. So the embassy was in a very difficult position because at one time it was saying, we're stabilized, we are a peaceful place, we have multi-party democracy now. The U.S. is giving us all this money to bring peace to Liberia, and then the other side, it didn't want to be seen as, I say, okay, openly supporting people staying here, Liberians staying here. And then those people who wanted to stay here, obviously were saying, well, the country is not, we get economic challenges, we get, crime issue, we get all these sort of bad things happening there. Why you want to send us back there? We've been in the country for about 30 years. We're U.S. citizens, we get kids, we get that, and all that sort of stuff. So the embassy didn't want to be seen, in this sort of position. But
that makes sense.
Behind the scene and quietly, they were supporting us and supported the cause as best as possible through EULA, other organizations and other, other groups. We went to the embassy many times and held meetings with them, held meetings there, or just sort of abreast them, with what was going on. It was frustrating many times because we wanted the direct support from the foreign minister back in Liberia or some government officials to try to make the case that the country was not ready to receive these folks. But you put yourself in the foreign minister's shoe.
Right.
You want to go out there and talk about how bad his country is, and he can't, it's the issue of pride and ego and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
I don't want to go there and say that and say, well, so please keep my citizens there and don't bring them because we can't take care of them right now.
Right. You can say that you want to project an image of the country that all is good. You don't, at the same time, you don't want to say things are bad here. Don't even think about coming.
Yeah, exactly.
But I must say that when I was preparing for the show, we had some calls because this has been very long. And even talking about embassy, anytime someone say the embassy, you are even thinking about the current ambassador, but there had been other ambassadors before this. So the process has been very long. You're talking about over 20 years. So a lot of things have happened that you and I may not even be aware of. There was a challenge to getting people for the show. Is like, okay, we saw your flyer and you have these people. What's about this one? What's about that one? What's about that one? So we had to make it clear that, hey, this is not about who did it. We just want a face so that we can celebrate this early Christmas and be happy together. What do you say to people who will say, well, Wynfred Russell just got in this thing. Why is he getting this platform?
Well, again, like we've said, we've been saying over and over again, and I think we all have in our own little individual camps, and we support who we support, but for whatever reason. The truth of the matter is that I've been, if someone were to say that, it's like, okay, because again, you put yourself, it becomes pretty tricky because you don't want to come across like you are boasting or you sort of coming across sort of arrogant, you think you this, this.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing the...
But the truth of the matter is just...
Mr. Russell?
Yes?
Okay, we're kind of losing you, so I was trying to chime in, but go ahead.
Yeah, so, but the truth of the matter is that I've been working on this for more than 10 years. First, when I was at the University of Minnesota, and I also as the founder and executive director of the organization called ACER, African Career Education and Resources, Inc. I've been working on this for a very long time. Now, I did take a pause. So back in 2013 2012 to 2017, I was overseas. I went overseas working on Ebola, and then I went to Nigeria. I was in Nigeria for a while, working on polio, and I came back in 2017. When I came back in 2017, I jumped in on it. When I came back in 2017, there were a group of women, female, young women, who had taken up this fight and started working on this issue as well. And so I just picked up from where they were with the advocacy. And then that was when, those young women, Denise Butler, for example, Frida Daniels, Abina Abraham, all young Liberian progressive women. I think we don't talk a lot about the efforts that women have made, continue to make. Georgette Gray from the OLM, they all have been working on this issue. So I just came in. Because it's not my disposition to just jump in and try to take over. So I came in and they said, well, we know you have some history working on this long before you left to go back to Africa. So come, and this is where we are. So they established a lot of these relationships in Washington, D.C. with the lawyers and all of these groups. And so I just, utilized their blueprint with my little name recognition to try to push things. So I've been working on this for a very long time, before the last 2 years. So the last 2 years have been a different focus on our team. I met these girls. I said, we're now going to focus on, we're tired with this annual renewal. We will now focus on full citizenship. That's the first time I heard about full citizenship. And I took it off from, I took it off from there. They built a lot of relationship with organizations like African communities together. It's a big advocacy group based in New York, Black African for Just Immigration called BAJI. There's another one called Black Immigrant Collective. So all of these big groups with a lot of resources. So I just joined in with them, so that the National TPS Alliance and all of that. So if somebody says that that's the history, I would tell them. I'll also remind that again, like I said, this is not, and when I became city council, my role so I was wearing two hats, working as an advocate and as a policymaker. The city of Brooklyn Park and the district that I represent in Brooklyn Park, I have the largest Liberian constituency in the US. So it was important to me too, not only as a Liberian, but as a policymaker, because if we did not push this stuff through, if we didn't get a positive resolution of this, my district, my city would have been in really, really deep problem. A lot of homes, they are owned by Liberians. A lot of Liberians live in these apartment complexes. The school district there that served that area, they were predominantly Liberian. So I had a vested interest as a policymaker to see this through and as an advocate. So my role here is not by accident. And it's not, we don't want to be talking all of this as sing praises, but like I've said, equally, there have been a lot of people who've done a lot of heavy lifting. So we came in here from the beginning of the conversation, but pay homage and honor all of those who've worked on this issue. It's not. This was not a fight that was won by just one group or one organization or one individual. Never. It can never happen. It never happened that way. So it just happens that you invited me here and I came here. Anybody could speak to a lot of what I just spoke about and some of the things that I've highlighted and what I have, and because of my role in City Hall and in the community and the organization I represent, we've been able to finance our trips back and forth to come to DC. I've been to DC in the last 2 years, almost every month I'm in DC, so pushing this through because the city, wanted to, it comes down to dollars and cents too, even though this is about our neighbors and all of that, but the city would have been impacted, economically, it would have been economically impacted big time. So, it's not by accident that I've been there, I'm fighting for this, pushing for this. This is not to negate or relegate or dismiss or ignore all of the tremendous efforts many people have put into this.
Right. No, that's you are 100% correct, and I was even able to articulate that we as media people, we see this as a victory for all Liberians. So it really shouldn't matter who is speaking. This is 20 years. We can find all people that have touched this bill, in 20 years to be on one show. So if we can have 1 or 2 person representing the effort to open this Christmas gift, and that's all the effort. But let's go into the politics of it, because some of the things I see trending on social media is Republican versus Democrat. They are saying Obama has not been able to deliver what Trump has just given us. When it came to Taylor leaving the country, it was a Republican President Bush who said Taylor have to leave. He did something that Bill Clinton couldn't do. You've been close to how these bills, these things are done. Some refer to that bill. Passing a bill has a sausage making. It can be a very dirty process. What went on? Is it fair to say Obama did not accomplish what Trump accomplished? So Liberians or Black people start to rethinking their unconditional alliance with the Democratic Party and take a close look at the Republicans.
Well, I'm not going to tell people which way they should vote or who they should vote for, which party they should embrace or support. But I think there is some kernel of truth to some of those assertions. Now, whether it's by happenstance or by design, I'm not sure. But if you, and I'm a student of history, and I'm sure you may be too as well. But if you go back to from the coup, I've been told, I was not, obviously, I was, you know, but if you go back from the coup, it was a democratic, president who was in power when Talbot was overthrown, and Jimmy Carter didn't, provide any support, when those 13 people were executed, and all of that. So if you go back to another pivotal year, I was just watching something on Facebook not too long ago, so I get some of this information from. But if you go back then to, when was it, 1985, 86? I mean, I'm not sure when the Kuyongba attempted coup took place. And that coup was thwarted, not necessarily because of the brilliance of the Liberian military leaders at the time, but that coup was put down because a tip-off that the Liberian government at the time received from Ronald Reagan. It was Reagan administration folks who were there. And reading history and all the documents on Liberia, that during Reagan, Liberia received more money, military assistance, than all of the presidents Liberia combined up to that point. So there were a lot of support from there. Now, and then you move on to George Bush, what he did, and then the war started under George Bush, but it intensified during the Clinton administration. And Clinton didn't, do much. A lot of the policy didn't do much to end, the suffering and the death and the destruction of Liberia. And then you saw what happened in Somalia on Clinton's watch. On the watch, you saw what happened in Rwanda on Clinton's watch too as well. So there is some. You see what happened in Libya under Obama's watch too as well. But then you can turn to Iraq and put finger to George Bush, the mess that was created there to Iraq. So there were a lot of blame to go around. But I think people are looking at some of those sort of I don't know if it was by design or not. But you saw what George Bush did in helping to end the war in Liberia by getting Taylor out and his support for Ellen Johnson's relief and all of that. But then hello?
Yeah, I'm hearing.
Okay. And then you look at what Obama did during Ebola too as well. So you have to weigh all of those things and make a decision. But just to be, let me just go back and pivot to the question that you asked. I think all sides, both the Democrats and the Republicans, did a lot because this bill was a compromise. The Democrats were pushing this, but it would not have gone anywhere without the support of the Republicans. I mean, that's just the way it is. It would not have happened without the Republicans. So we have to give credit to all sides and all of what we've been saying, all of the people who've helped. And that's part of what I have even posted on Facebook and said, look, yeah, the Democrats have been the one pushing this and all of that, but the Republicans deserve a lot of credit too. A lot of them, when it came to this critical stage of the conversation, we needed the Republicans, and the Republicans stepped in and were able to. It was a game changer when it came in to turn this around. Now, is that sufficient to say that the Democrats don't care about us, but the Republicans do? I'm not sure. I'm just telling you, to what I've heard and what I've seen and how things have played out. But there's no question about it. We've gotten a lot of support from the Democrats. All of the Minnesota congressional delegation, all of them, every single one of them, have been steadfastly behind this, supporting this. We have Republicans too. Eric Paulson was a Republican. He was a big supporter of this DED, of TPS and then DED. So I'm not sure if it's fair to say that, but I think people are looking at in totality all of the different things that have happened. The Republicans have a lot of evangelical support Liberians, they were big Christian group. I have a lot of churches and all of that. Many of those churches advocated and all of that. So that played a significant role in this as well, as we mentioned. But I must tell you that it is true that there were a lot of progressive Democrats that didn't even want this to go through. Why these Liberians? Why just 4,000? Why not Dhaka? We have almost 1 million folks there. So if you're looking for votes, this is not where you go to look for votes.
Right.
This is where you go out of compassion. This is a human rights issue. It's an issue to support, a group of people who have been here all these years, have planted roots here all these years, and pay taxes here. This was a way to, to support them. So that's my view on that's my view on it.
And you give us a history lesson. That's very important. So let's wind this thing down. Looking at this small success that we are celebrating now, what can we learn from it going forward in working together or taking an approach of other things that may be things that we need to tackle? What can we learn from it? How do we move forward from here?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I think that the lesson learned here for me is that collaboration is the way. We don't have the numbers, we don't have the resources to go out on our own. So we need to work together. East Coast versus Midwest versus now. A lot of folks have been saying too, we will clarify, is that this stuff was not just for Minnesota. This is going to cover, U.S. laws are not written that way, passed by the Senate and just for one particular, area, one particular location. No, it just happens that we have a large Liberian community in Minnesota, many of whom are DED holders. And like I said, I just talked about my own district. My district alone in Brooklyn Park, 20% of the people in my district is Liberian. So a huge Liberian population, collaboration is the way. We have to learn to work with each other and work with all of these other groups. All of this recognition, everybody wants recognition and all this sort of stuff, it would have killed the thing. And like I said, if you look at some of the people, if you want to go, as we say back in, let me just put it in the Liberian parlance, that also tussle.
Mm-hmm.
That also tussle. The people who are doing the really heavy lifting, they were all non-Liberians. All non-Liberians. I'm here talking, you won't see them on Facebook, Dennis. They're not on Facebook. Until we post a picture, all this stuff, they're not there. But they've been working their tail off. So, how do we strategically collaborate, with folks? I think that's, for me, that's the lesson learned, that collaboration, work. We had Jewish people there, phone banking, calling. We had, white Jewish folks. We had, Republican folks. The union folks. All of these folks. So, it's a lot of, it was just collaborating with all of these folks on one shared interest in agenda. And that agenda was, we need to find a way to create permanent residency, a green card for these folks. We need to take this cloud from over the head of annual renewal and all of that.
All right. Mr. Russell, this has been a very fruitful conversation, and on opening this Christmas package and enjoying it for the rest of all of us. So I want to thank you so much for coming, for taking, you are in the nation's capital on official business, and we had to get you. So thank you so much for coming. Before I let you go, let's get your parting statement.
Well, this is great. Thanks for the opportunity. I just wanted to, as much as I can, as best as I can, to help to clear the air on some of these things. There are a lot of things that, there was a saying that I think you heard, when you see a duck on the pond, on the river, on the water, it looks so graceful, it looks so peaceful, but you're not looking underneath there.
Yeah.
The path is paddling.
Legs are suffering.
Yes, it's paddling. So, you know, there were a lot of heavy lifting. There were a lot of things people did behind the scene that you all don't know about. You know, the difficult role that people play. So I just happen to be one of the thousands of voices, you know, to just help to tell the story. So I'm grateful to the DED holders. I'm grateful to you for helping to tell the story. There are so many different stories. You just heard the part that I know I've been involved with and I've been engaged in, you know, over the years, and we'll continue. The work doesn't stop here. We'll move on to different advocacy because we, like I said, it's part of collaboration. So we're going to work to continue to see DACA, to see that DACA goes through. Also, people who are on TPS. We also have a crisis brewing at the border with African immigrants being held up at the border. When you talk about immigration, many people think about Latino and Hispanic people. They don't think about African. The Africans at the border that are struggling, that are having a lot of hard time. The mainstream media, you don't cover them. And so the work continues. We're done, you know, and, you know, we have this small, you know, victory, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. So I appreciate this opportunity and to come and help to tell the story. Any questions, any concerns people have, they can reach out to me. I can give my email address if you don't mind. Is Wynfred.russell@brooklynpark.org. So it's WYNFRED.RUSSEL.Brooklyn BROOKLYNPARK.org. So you can reach out to me anytime, you know, as well. And my direct cell number is 612-283-1859. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Russell. And you know, there are still a lot of unknowns about the process and how people move forward. So if you have that information, please feel free to come back and share with our people through this broadcast like this, through publications, through pamphlets, brochures, and what have you, so that we know. And if there are people that we need to contact, if I have a family member, or if I'm on DED, you want to go through the process, how do we get through that? Please be available. We're going to be contacting you. And if you have any news, please feel free to share with us. Again, I want to thank you. I want to thank all our viewers for the show. This is how we're going to end it tonight.